Ancient aliens.
I don't know what it was.
Right?
I know it's.
Yeah. No, but y'all have seen the content, right? Where they did what was it, a Doppler scan or something?
The
It
structures.
was a seismic scan kind of thing.
Yeah,
Whatever
it was
underneath
it was
the
some kind
seismic
of like
scans.
seismic scan, and they found. Now here's the thing. I'm making this statement, but it still hasn't, as of right now, it still hasn't been peer reviewed, right?
Yeah. Peer-reviewed.
I'll peer review you.
But they found structures, like these cylinder structures that buried themselves down multiple stories underneath the ground.
Well, we've proven the pyramids have a way to have electricity through them. Like,
Have we?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that was some ancient alien shit.
No.
No.
There is a current that can technically like be
Yes.
sustained through
It
the
wasn't all
structure.
the time, but during certain eclipses, certain events, they did have the ability to have electricity and power things.
That's true.
But
You
it's
also-
not
that's
to
not
the,
untrue.
It's not our understanding of electricity. it's
you
a
also
different
have-
understanding.
During that time frame, they had electroplating, which
Yes,
was
they did have electroplating.
where they would have batteries. So they had an understanding of electricity, even if it was just the most basic.
You're saying the Egyptians did?
Yes. During
Yeah.
that time
There
frame,
was-
This is confirmed.
there
Are you
was
talking about the pots with
electroplate.
the fucking copper in the middle
Yes.
and the vinegar and the
Yes.
all this, that, the
Actual-
other?
the Baghdad battery.
the Baghdad batteries
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that we recovered from backdated to that time frame. So we know for a fact that they had electroplating because that's what it was used for. You can find it out from looking at some of their
They
things
simply
recovered
put,
from it.
for your normal layman, they had an understanding of how lightning strikes and how they could use it to their benefit.
Yeah.
Not electricity as we would understand. I flick on a light switch, I have power.
No.
There
They
was,
had
there was-
Benjamin Franklin understanding.
they had, I would say it's a lot less than that.
Yeah,
They,
it had to be less than Franklin.
they had an understanding that lightning can strike this and we can utilize this for certain aspects of our stuff. And Lucy has taken the prime seat.
Lucy took the seat.
Star of the show, apparently.
Lucy is an
She's
ancient
making
alien.
her debut,
Look
episode
at them
40
bug
something.
eyes
Yeah.
and Batman
Yeah, I
ears.
don't think she's actually been on camera.
She has not. But
She
look
is-
at her bug eyes and Batman ears.
Yeah, no, she's an ugly dog. You
A
love her
bug-eyed
to death.
Batman.
I love her to death, but man, she's a ugly, beautiful dog that I love to death.
Beautifully ugly.
Face only a father could love.
But back to the pyramids. You know, another interesting thing because obviously
the
once they
structures, the electricity.
once they start deep diving into the pyramids and the potential for these structures, because we already questioned them being able to build these structures, right?
Loosely, yeah.
Yeah,
Some it's split, but there's
Loosely, yeah.
If there truly is, and if this gets peer reviewed, and there truly is stuff that's buried, like just stories underground like that, you know, the Egyptians didn't do that. That's an older society. I'm
no,
sorry.
So they've made quarries for millennia. Quarries have been done time and time again. That's how we have a lot of that. Because here we go. The pyramids are made out of rock that isn't native to the area.
Yes.
So it was hauled hundreds of miles from the quarry that goes deeper than the pyramid.
Yeah.
So it's reasonable to assume, again, it's assumption because peer review, we don't have a lot of people fully diving into this because the pyramids they're old, but they're new and they're coming back.
Yeah.
That it is a potential that we could have as humanity dug down deep enough, built the structures, and built it all the way up again.
Now, can I do a bit
Go.
of a sidebar? They do think that the Sphinx is even older than we originally thought it was.
Agreed.
Because the head,
It's
they
hollow.
don't believe. Well, the head they don't believe is the original head.
The head
Correct.
doesn't match the body.
Yes.
Yep.
You
They
can find
think-
that out from the stone, aging the stones.
They think that the head.
Cat chase.
Cat chase. They think that the head was originally like a lion's head.
Correct. Which
Uh,
ruins all your understanding of
Yes,
Sphinx for
yes.
every single game, movie, book.
Everything.
So it is very interesting to look at the deep visual structures that we have built throughout pyramids, or because they've done the same thing for. There's a place very similar built around the same time. We have the Mayans who built around the same time, and then in Southeast Asia, on the islands, they built some very similar structures that are now underwater.
Yeah.
That are done very, very similar, and they
Well,
have very, very deep veins that go into it that aren't connected to cave systems.
Yes.
Are you talking about the sunken temple off the coast of one of them Asian continents, where the entire temple is completely preserved from when it got sunk? Because the emperor of the time ended up flooding that region to make a dam of some sort, and it ended up leading to a pretty much time capsule of a whole ass temple.
I know there's a couple over there in Southeast Asia that time date to the same time period, the Mayans, the
Yeah.
Egyptians. So we all have a very similar time period. But if
now-
we're talking about pyramids alone, we have to understand that if Mike's my dad and I'm his son and he's my son, his building projects won't be done until he's pharaoh.
Yeah.
Like that's the way their projects work.
That's not even like an ancient thing.
Did y'all hear about the sarcophagi done in these deep tunnels and under one of the old pyramids?
That was under more rocks than what they thought.
It was like one of the old pyramids that just essentially looks like a dirt mound, but they're these itty bitty little tunnels, and they've got these multiple sarcophagi.
Yep.
That are
The
made
burial
out
catacombs?
of
No.
dense
It's a different one.
granite.
Okay.
That when they went to carve it, they barely carved any depth into the granite whatsoever. And to this day, engineers, like professional engineers, cannot figure out how they moved this heavy ass granite
Yep.
and perfectly aligned it down these tunnels, because it just doesn't make sense.
So
There's the same thing for the Mica over in the Mayans,
Yep.
like talking about the Mayan pyramids.
exactly.
Back in Mesoamerica, they had this whole sheet of mica. I think it was something like 20 by 20 feet or something like that, or whatever. It might have been larger, something around there, kind of thing, like an infeasible layer of perfectly preserved
To move.
singular sheet of mica, which they had no idea how they A, elevated it to begin with, and B, actually inculcated it with the structure of those Mayan pyramids.
Exactly.
Like,
Talking about them specifically, the Central America region, Mayans, as like we talk about them, obsidian glass. We didn't understand obsidian glass till like 1980s,
Yeah.
and that was the beginning of understanding
Yeah.
of how they broke it, how they made all these tools. It was like forever ago, they figured it out how to
Yep.
use this.
to be
What
fair,
it-
Machu Picchu is still standing. We still don't fully understand the architecture of Machu Picchu and to what extent it's resistant
And that's
resistant to
why-
like
which one is Machu Picchu?
Chile. It's like the mountain
Oh,
range.
the mountain one?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
The mountain one where they figured out
by
that,
Argentina.
hold on. They figured out that the pools in it
ADHD.
filled up and turned into reflecting pools for the stars based off of where you were standing in the building in the windows.
Or the
And that was
city
just for
that's
the
under
and
flight.
they complete, because originally they thought it was just a palace for one of the kings, and then that happened, and they were like, "This is not what we thought
But
this
the
was."
palace is up there, and underneath in the mountain is a city.
Yeah.
But this is why I was touching on the obsidian glass. We didn't understand until recently, relatively recently, how to fully make obsidian glass tools. Okay, what if they're using something very similar to that time? Because perfect example,
Well, we've demonstrated that we've lost technology,
we have
right?
lost technology.
Because we don't know how to make original Damascus steel.
Yep.
We do not
Correct.
know how to make it. We don't know how to make Greek fire.
But you know,
or that it exists.
talking about the Japanese samurai swords, how many still standing actual masters are there?
One.
I think there's one or two at most.
I think I thought that there was one.
I think, yeah,
I
I
thought it
do
was-
think you're right. No, there's not a lot.
I thought it was 3.
It's my dad. He's still here. It's just the one.
It's just the one. Okay, so we'll go off Keebler the elf,
Hey,
the
bro.
tickler.
Hey, Pearl.
Keebler the elf tickler.
He's
but-
with the
Wiggling.
tickler elf.
Yeah, she's just
She's
whistled
just
in
But
place.
straight
no, our
wiggling.
understanding of
She's like, I'm
of
here.
technology and how we've done things has changed substantially. And if we look back, it was like, for example, how many animals have gone extinct since we've
That we're
colonized
bringing back.
America? So if
Not
we
fully.
look at that, how much technology have we lost from how we used to kill buffalo, or how we used to do this, or
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, the theory that dinosaurs potentially existed during our time because they found petrified stone that had a dinosaur foot and a human foot in the same place.
Where's this?
I mean,
So
I just go off.
raise
That was in
you
North
one-
America.
I raise you one. There are actually, and this is going down the rabbit hole, but it seems like we've already chased Alice down the
Yeah, we're
Wonderland.
going all the way,
we
bro.
are, but
We're
they're
going
still
all the way.
We're
mostly
schizo mode right
connected.
now.
Go, 'cause I
Going
have a
down this
piece.
rabbit hole in, I think it's South America, not South Africa. It was in Africa. There is a certain region inside of it that the natives and pretty much everyone around that region has, in their own words, not connecting because different languages, language barrier.
Yeah.
Has described, I think it's a Paleosaurus, the four-legged a long neck dinosaur with the fins.
Really?
Yes. To date. Like, they've seen it within our lifetime.
So, and this is what I find fascinating is because, like don't misrepresent. I'm not saying dragon because that's a very Western belief that was spread by the church during the spread of Christianity across
It was
the world.
pretty
right?
Chinese too.
Hold on. Let me finish.
Of course.
However, there are depictions of large lizard-like creatures across the world, all over the place, before the spread of dragons everywhere, right? But they're everywhere. Like, you see it in the artwork in Chinese, Japanese, fucking artwork all over the place. So did humans, because we're great at this shit, did we kill them all?
So this is where I want to touch on, which still connects with what you say. I always go back to the Bible because it's a historical document. That's how I understand it. So we go to Job 40:15 through 24.
Leviathan.
Nope, not the Leviathan. This is my argument for dinosaurs. Look at Behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. It goes further, but we talk about this giant being. Its tail sways like a cedar. The sinews of its thighs are close-knit, its bones in tubes of bronze, its limbs like rods of iron. It ranks among the works of God, yet its maker can approach it with his sword. The hills bring it their produce, and the wild animals play nearby. So we're talking about a giant herbivore.
Yes.
During Job's time.
Yes.
Like, this is a giant being that the only way we can understand it is it's a giant behemoth.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's look at those times. What was happening during Job's era? A lot of the planet was more marshy.
Yep. Yeah.
So all these theories with science and everything else, it's very similar that if a being was going to be that big, it needed to be pretty much floating in water.
Which, let's not forget the origination of science. What was science originally keeping?
To disprove God.
No. To prove God.
Science was not.
Science, hold on.
I'm listening.
Science,
I disagree.
science, as it was originally driven, was to seek out God's existence in nature. Was essentially to prove God. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't people out there who weren't trying to disprove God, but people who were seeking out God in nature through science.
So
Go ahead, Aardvark.
So, with that, I'd have to say that's it's more of a one-sided view because you had two parties going. The more popular party wasn't actually trying to prove God.
it was a human curiosity.
It was human curiosity trying to disprove God, saying there is no
And
creator.
I'll stop you there. Yeah, that's not even what it was. A human desire, a curiosity to understand the world. That's what science, not God. God wasn't involved in the beginning of science. Science has been molested over, I don't know, back to Mesopotamium.
Mesopotamia.
Yep.
Are we
that-
talking about the scientific method formally in the Aristotelian form?
Yes.
Okay, well that's pretty Grecian.
Yes, but
He takes some
that's the
amount.
start of science. The next time it was really used, we're talking about the Renaissance age.
That's a big gap.
When was the last time we did science? Because we believe
Before that, from Aristotle to the Renaissance, because there's
No,
quite a bit in between.
Aristotle wasn't in Mesopotamia.
I know. I'm saying he's Grecian.
Correct. But I'm
are you
talking
referring to
about-
the scientific method formally? Or are you just saying science generally speaking?
So,
to like
so the scientific method formally was not necessarily established until Milton, right? Because we had
Not
a
true.
lot.
Aristotle-
Hold on. We had a lot of people who were applying science because you had your alchemy, right? Early on in life, you had your
we're
other
still
stuff.
skipping a lot
We're-
here. What do you mean?
This is all science,
Well,
but
science
not
started-
necessarily the scientific method.
Okay,
Or
okay.
as we
Scientific
understand
method
it.
as we understand didn't come till about Renaissance.
And I don't
If
mean to
we-
play semantics here. I just mean like for the scientific
No,
method
this
generally.
is this is what the podcast is about.
Yeah,
Like-
no, we want.
Like for me, let me explain my understanding. So science started way before the Renaissance era, way before Jesus was born. This is my understanding of it because we see this in moon worshipers in the Bible. We see this in all the other religious texts. They worship the moon. Well, why? Because it told us seasons. the moon and the stars.
Like the Canaanites, you mean?
Yeah, the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Amalekites.
Amalekites.
Yep.
Those damn Amalekites are always causing
So,
trouble.
so we talk about when we started doing loose science, and we didn't get to true science until about the Dark Ages. We didn't get to true science until about as we understand it today, true science.
I don't mean to pick on
Well, no,
semantics.
listen,
I just
let's
mean
go.
true science. We had the formalized scientific method, that is to say, hypothesis, process, procedural, repeatable scientific method, in the form of Aristotle, being the predecessor of, right, or what is it, acceding to the seat of Socratic, then Platonic, and then Aristotelian science.
Romans, around the Roman time frame.
Greco-Roman, right? We'll say Greco-Roman because we don't want to go specific into history, whatever. I'm not going to dog
put
on.
layman terms for the general
We'll say
public.
Greco-Roman. We'll say Greco-Roman.
I'm a layman.
So the Greek,
I'm somewhat of a layman in this
the
anyways.
Romans, we're talking about all these different gods now.
Yeah, and we've got now Alexander being tutored personally by Aristotle. We've got
Which, by the way, we lost that library, and it's still gone.
To this
That still
day,
pisses
we're
me
feeling
off.
this.
But
which
let's
was
go back to
somewhat
Keebler.
redundant in the fact that there were other temples within
Yes.
Turkey,
Yep.
Greece,
Istanbul
Armenia,
had a
by the way.
huge one.
Armenian pride.
Yes, but here's the difference: is that all those libraries didn't converge back together, and a lot of that same knowledge was lost in various wars and religious purges.
Because Alexander did something very great that, sadly, in World War II, the Germans decided to do a very similar aspect, but King Alexander did it very well, and he did it very politically, where he could grab everyone's knowledge and put it together in a less heinous way.
Okay,
We're
going on some
Than Hitler.
crazy shit right now, but I agree.
Because what they did, what Hitler and his group did, was they rolled deep into places that killed everyone off. They took their knowledge.
So when we say science, where are we basing science off of?
I say the
Because-
Aristotelian method.
Okay, so we're
period.
going back to Greek-Roman. Okay.
That is the progeny of science.
Okay, so around the same time that everything else was going on that we've talked about, these temples are being built.
Somewhat.
Around the same time. I'm not
Grecian
saying-
influence in the Mediterranean still took a while. Sub-Saharan Africa was not, put into the form. The Library of Alexandria, Timbuktu, and its formal library was not established at that point. Aside from like
So
I'm not going to go into the.
Here's something
I'm not
that
gonna dog
throws a
on you
lot
guys
of
for
people out. The
No,
dec-
dog
no,
on it.
dog on it.
Dog on it.
Because
Dog
here's
on
something
us.
a lot of people don't understand. The Declaration of Independence was signed around the same time Renaissance era was going on in Europe.
So
True.
I got you
And
one
a lot
better.
of people don't, and you're like, holy crap, you talk about all these different science theologians are doing stuff that at the same time the United States is being born. Woo!
True.
Yeah,
So-
we had a Pearl incident.
So, if I may interject, here is something
Still
that
going?
will help you, at least the less historical buff viewers understand for the time frame we're talking about and what really was going on.
Yeah, 'cause I'm not trying to go into like the
You
weeds of
have the fact that during the American Civil War, like we separate rifles, samurai, the proper English gentleman, and the age of piracy as 4 separate years.
But samurais were going around the
But
same time
all
we were
4
doing
of them, in a actual historical sense,
same
could have
piece.
met at a bar and
did.
actually held a conversation, and all of them would have been in the correct time frame.
So that's why when
Didn't you
when
see
we
the
talk
Last
about,
Samurai?
when we talk about science, that's where I'm asking, where are we starting science for the
If you're talking about rigorous, theologically disparate, or at the very least theologically agnostic inquiry into the natural science, quote unquote, sciences as we understand them, that is to say, like the inquiry of the natural world and its laws and principles, I wouldn't say that started with Aristotle. That's not my argument. I'm saying that was formalized in the form that.
I would agree.
I would
It-
agree
it
with
was-
that because it was not formalized. Like I said earlier, before that there were alchemists trying to turn
Agreed.
lead into
And-
gold,
and I
they're-
think we can
and
all
maybe
agree
succeeding. We have no idea.
There were
that
Hebronic
doctrine-
inscriptions
so
And-
in.
the
and there-
doctrine was built during
and
the
there-
time period you're
were
debating.
There were witches who were solving issues using natural herbal medicines, which
still
are
s-
the same herbal medicines that we turn into ibuprofen and shit. We just call them by different names.
Correct.
We're still skipping about 2,000 years. And even then, ibuprofen and the willow that you put in your teeth and
Isn't
stuff like
new.
that or whatever to dull pain, China had that around the same time as Aristotle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm talking about all before that. I'm talking about like witch living in the fucking woods.
How about like mud creatures like Neanderthals just sucking down like snails or whatever? Man, they sure make my stomach feel good.
My stomach feels
But
good.
to get back to the root of this is the pyramids. We're really discussing the science that the Egyptians had for the pyramids for us to figure out whether or not these roots that they built for these giant buildings, because that's what they are, they're roots. If they're that far in the ground, they're roots.
And based off of the imagery they showed us, those are structured.
Massive single stone structures.
Those are not quarried because they're giant cylinders with spirals going around.
And we know they were good at math. We know this, so there is a possibility the stone could have been there. Possibility.